I just had the most amazing conversation with Plum Johnson. She's just turned 80. She is the author of 2 books and she's done incredible things. I'm just going to read her bio because we just had the most incredible spiritual conversation, but empowering conversation. It was gorgeous. Let me just tell you about her. So Plum was born in Richmond, Virginia. She spent her early years in Hong Kong and Singapore before her family immigrated to Canada in 1952, and they settled in Oakville, which is where I live right now. She received her Bachelor of Science degree, and she was enrolled in an MFA theater program at York University. In 1983, she founded Kids Canada Publishing Corp. Just think about this back then, to pioneer the first parenting publication in Canada, and was awarded the Toronto Sun's Women on the Move Award for Outstanding Achievement in Business. Over the next 10 years, her flagship parenting magazine, Kids Toronto, won multiple international design awards. And in 1992, Plum was awarded the Award of Excellence from the Parenting Publications of America for her monthly editorial columns. I met her actually at this gallery where she was doing an author reading. And so she wrote her first book in 2014. That book is called They Left Us Everything. It's a memoir. And then she's just written another book called The Trouble with Fairy Tales. She's such an incredible woman. It was such a joy to talk to her. In addition to her writing and publishing, Plum is an accomplished illustrator and portrait. She's just such an amazing woman that I'm just so grateful that she agreed to come on the podcast and have this conversation. Supposedly it's her first podcast ever. So Plum, I thank you so much for having this conversation with me. Let's dive in because this is a juicy one that you all are going to love. Welcome to the High Vibes Podcast. I'm Binu, your host. My goal with every episode is to leave you feeling better, shining your light a little bit brighter than before you press play. Let's dive in. Oh, I'm so happy to have you here, Plum. Thank you for being on my podcast.
My pleasure.
So I think it's really fun. We're just going to have a conversation here today. I want the people listening to not just hear your way of life, but your wisdom. And I only know a little bit about you, so I'm so curious just to learn more. And just so people know, they heard your intro. I'm going to do the intro separate than our interview. I met you because one of my friends said there's this author reading. Why don't you come down? Because she knows that I'm writing a book. And she's like, why don't you come? You're probably interested in this. I'm like, sure. Be around the energy of an author. And you showed up. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm mesmerized by all the things, not just all the things that you've done, but the way you spoke to the audience that day. And so I'd love just for you to tell the people listening just a little bit about you, the author, and how you got here.
Well, that's so interesting to me because I don't remember how I spoke to the audience that night.
Yeah.
I think I just did my usual I don't know, stumbling around in the dark and hoping that people would ask questions and get the answers that they needed. But you came to my talk on The Trouble with Fairy Tales, right?
Yes.
And that was my second book, memoir, because I started really late in life. And I think I published my first They Left Us Everything. I think I was 65 when that came out. If that's right.
Wow.
That was
2000. Yeah. So you were talking about. So actually, what year did that book come out?
2014.
2014. Yeah. So I do want to talk about this, and so what I remember so fondly about that night, it was in Oakville at this gallery that I was invited to.
Yeah, at an art gallery.
It was an art gallery, which was beautiful
for me. Yeah. Yeah, surprising for me, and only because the curator of that art gallery, I used to babysit her son.
Oh, see, that's synchronicity, right? That's synchronicity.
Yeah, it also shows how old I am. Yeah.
I love it. Well, your daughter was there, and I was kind of guessing that your daughter and I are probably about the same age.
Yep.
And you're probably about the age of my dad, would be my guess. My dad's, well, maybe not. I think you're 80. Is that okay to ask?
80 this year. Yeah.
Okay. So what fascinated me about you was not just that you were presenting and talking about a book that you've just written, the Trouble with Fairy Tales, but that your first book you wrote at 65 and you were telling the whole story, which was cool. And a lot of my listeners are actually from Oakville and I live in Oakville. So that I was like, oh my gosh, she's from Oakville, downtown Oakville. Like, where is this house? So cool.
Yeah.
But it's when you started, somebody asked you a question. And what made me come up to you after is they asked you a question about how you knew to do something. I don't remember the question, but your answer was, well, a voice told me to.
Right.
And right then, the way you said it, I was like, oh, she's spiritual. she's
Yeah.
she's hearing from her spirit guides and angels. I need to talk to her.
It's true. It's all my life. It's been like that. And I think, I don't know, I'm surprised at how many people, act like they don't have that voice, because I actually think everybody does. And you have to trust it and listen for it. And I remember when my son was in his teens and I said to him something like, just trust your gut. And he said, I'm not even sure I have one. And I said, of course you do. Everybody has one. You just have to learn to listen to it. And so people discount it because it's not science.
Right. So, Plum, when you say, okay, so I kind of grew up with this, and I'm happy to share how this showed up for me. But when you say you grew up with it, so did your parents teach you to listen to that voice, whether you call it intuition or trusting your gut? I'm curious what you call it, actually.
I don't know that I've ever called it anything. It's just a part of me. But mom had that. There were lots of instances when mom would have a spiritual connection to something. Almost like, well, for sure, ESP. ESP was happening all the time growing up in our house, I would say.
Interesting.
But I can remember when one of my brothers was studying in England, and mom and dad were asleep, in the Oakville house, and mom woke up in the middle of the night and said, oh my gosh, Sandy's had an accident. I can see him lying beside the highway. And dad said, don't be ridiculous. You just had a nightmare, go back to sleep. And about, I don't know, I can't remember, an hour or two later, because of the time change, the phone rang and it was a nurse in England, and it had happened exactly the way mom pictured it. So the minute that Sandy fell off his motorbike, got hit by a car on the M4, mom knew that, and it woke her up in Oakville. So that's what I mean.
Yeah, so you grew up with that. So to me, that is like your mom actually was was having like premonitions or psychic. I believe we're all psychic, but hers must have been so strong.
But don't you think it's just the mother-child bond? If you think about it, we were all inside our mother's bodies.
Yes.
Originally. So it makes sense to me, or stands to reason, that you would have a particular connection with your own mother.
Yes. No, that makes sense. I have a few friends who are mediums, and they tap into people that have died and are on the other side. And some of them see pictures. So I don't see pictures. I hear, like I have this like here, but yeah, it's like that mother's intuition, I guess, that we call, right? So you grew up with this conversation happening in your home. I think that is what's beautiful.
It was just normal. It wasn't
just
considered
normal.
anything out of extraordinary.
Yeah.
It was just
Yes.
part of the human condition that you would have these. And then I've had, subsequent, I write about it in The Trouble with Fairy Tales. My spirit guide that I met when I was 16 in England, who was a ghost, as it turns out. And again, when that happened, I was in a bedroom with my mother, and she took it as something completely natural. When this ghost was feeling my face and woke me up, and I was sort of alarmed, and called for her. She said, oh, go back to sleep. It's probably just a ghost. They're all benign, and England's full of them.
Wow.
That was it. Middle of the night, just sort of like took it in her stride and told me to worry.
I feel when I was growing up, nobody was talking like this, right? So that's what I think is the difference. So my parents came from India in the late 60s, and I think they were just going through so much stress of just bringing children up in a whole new culture that they were learning about. And so so we're Sikh, so we would go to what we call, the temple was like Gurdwara, and it was in Punjabi, so I didn't understand it. And we would sit there. So I learned actually just to be really still. So even to this day, I still love stillness. I don't always meditate, but I love stillness. I know it comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody was talking openly. It's like, this is what you believe. It was really just like, believe in God. And we go there and we pray to God, and then we would live life. So there wasn't any integration where so my mom passed away when I was 20. That's when things shifted for me. Is I was seeking answers. So she was 47, I was 20. And of course, at that time, like
Young.
two months with cancer by the time they found it to when she passed, us children were like, you're trying to make sense out of something that makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I started asking, almost like when I think back, I was asking guides, angels. I was asking up, not sure where I was asking. And I started seeing feathers. My brother started seeing feathers. I was open to talking to, someone referred me to a friend who was a medium, and I resisted it for so long. And then people started showing up in my life who were like tapped in spiritually, that they were able to tap into spirit guides, and a couple times like my mom came through, and that's where like my belief started. But it started with these feathers and possibility that she's somewhere spiritually, that she still has access to me, and I have still access to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went down this whole, so I'm a life coach. That's how I started. And then the spiritual coach, it started becoming this thing where so many people were so stressed, and the only way I could get them to believe in something bigger is to go ask spiritual questions. So that's where it all opened up, where now I'm like, oh, I'm opening up the door to talk about all these spiritual things.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And I think religion and spirituality, of course, can coexist side by side. Yeah. And we certainly went to church every Sunday. Dad was a warden at St. Jude's, and Mom taught Sunday school. And we were taught to be quiet, just like you. We took up the back pew, and we weren't allowed to, say anything. And I got used to the meditative quality of, the sermon droning on, or the Old English prayers and so on. And I stopped after my divorce. So I replicated that behavior with my children. In Toronto, when they were young, I got involved in the, Anglican church here and neighborhood church. And then at some point after my divorce, I just stopped going to church. I've never lost my belief in a higher power, whatever anybody calls it. I call it God, but
everybody's different.
Power, yeah. Mm-hmm. And but organized religion just no longer holds the same weight for me, but for sure the spiritual aspect, it does. And I certainly communicate with Mom all the time, much like you do, I imagine.
Yeah, I love that. So when you
towards her more now.
You also said something, and correct me if I'm wrong. You said something about like being in your mother's womb. Do you remember? Is there something that you?
No, I don't remember specifically what I said that night, but it's about. It's probably about that belief of mine that you come out of your mother's body, and so I firmly believe that you have a spirit. The connection is there.
Yeah.
You can communicate with your mother even more readily than you can communicate with anybody else. But I believe you can communicate with all kinds of people, and I've experimented myself. And I talk about that in my book too, of one particular boyfriend that I had. I used to experiment whether I could communicate with him when he lived a distance away, and generally, not always, but most of the time, I could get him to call me.
So, Plum, how would you do this? Like, this is I'm just really curious about. So, I love this because I haven't played with like, can I communicate with other people actually? So, I'm curious about this. So, how would you do this? Like, would
I
you
guess
get quiet somewhere? Would you
no,
write?
no. In my mind, there's absolutely no. I have no like scientific proof for any of this. This is just my experience, my worldly experience. Um, I have always thought that I could be either a sender or a receiver, and it changes depending on the person and the circumstance. With in this particular relationship, I was the sender, and so I would sit very quietly, and I would imagine, because I knew where he lived, I knew the the rooms extremely well. So I would simply be there in my mind, in my imagination, in my mind. I would focus. It was like meditating, but I would walk in through the door. I would open the door. I'd go into one room, look for him, look at all the furniture. I'd go into the next room I'd go look through all the rooms until I found him, and then I would tell him I needed him to call me, and it would simply be a focus thing, and I'd wait for the phone to ring. I never told him I was doing that because I think he probably I don't know whether he would have liked it. He wouldn't have. He was a spiritual person himself, so he wouldn't have poo-pooed it, I don't think. But I didn't want to risk it. So anyway, but it didn't work all the time, but it worked enough times that I thought, okay, probably with practice, there's something to this.
Yeah, so this is interesting because what I talk to a lot of people about, and I'm going to experiment with this myself, is a lot of people see signs and synchronicities, just like you were saying earlier, like these synchronicities. So when they see a pattern in something that is not logical, or like, where did that come from? I was just having this conversation and now there's a billboard that just says the answer that I was looking for. We go and we discern what that means. And I'm doing a lot of work to help people trust the signs. So what you're doing is almost like coming at it from the other place, which is actually empowering to me. You're taking control of a situation, going, let me just play with this. Because to me, when you say play, that creative spark within you comes out and opens you up to something more like limitless possibilities, infinite possibilities. Well, curiosity.
I've lived long enough, and I've had other experiences which I think I write about. They might have been cut. It's so funny after you write a book, and you spend. This took far too many years. This particular book, but it was cut and rewritten so many times that I no longer remember what. I should read it one day.
Okay.
I remember what what's in there finally. So this might have been cut, but there's a scene that I've written. Shortly after when my marriage was in the process of breaking down, I was in a heightened state of vulnerability. I guess you almost feel when you go through something like that, you almost feel like your nerves are on the outside. You feel very in pain a lot of the time, but it's more of an emotional, spiritual pain, and you feel very vulnerable anyway. Raw, kind of. But also, because of that, you're how can I almost like accepting of whatever's coming your way to help you. My then husband and I were still sharing the same house. We had the 3 children they were young. And I had rented this apartment to go and paint in the mornings whenever I could get a babysitter. I would go and do that. And so it was a very private space, and it had a little kitchenette. And I was sitting at the table there one morning, just quietly by myself, and all of a sudden I experienced automatic writing. I didn't actually know what that was. I hadn't experienced it before, but I had this friend named Jill from England who had come over to visit. Had her parents had known my parents, and she had Dad's address in her book. And in those days, that's what you did. You looked up, you came with letters of introduction. There was no cell phone or anything.
Yes.
And so she stayed with us in Oakville for a while, and she and I became quite close. She was a little bit older than I was. And she was a gypsy type. She had trained as a court reporter, and she wanted to travel. So she was going across Canada, and she ended up in Yellowknife as a court reporter. She also had diabetes. So she had to be really careful with her diet. And when she was in Yellowknife, she fell in love with this, from the way she described him in her letters, this sort of, wild guy, very handsome, but also a traveler. And so then after they got married, one night on the street of Yellowknife, I didn't hear from her anymore. And I worried about her, didn't know. So this letter described to me how she died.
Oh.
It was a poem. And I knew that she had been pregnant and had a baby daughter and was sort of living in the wild, that he had built her this log cabin or whatever, and then he would take off on his canoe trips. But I didn't know she had died. And this poem described it, and I was shocked. My hand was moving so fast that I couldn't control it, and it was a message from her, and so some people might discount that or throw it. I chose to believe it. I ended up writing her aunt because I heard many years later that her aunt was raising the daughter. And asked the aunt if she would like this poem, like if she knew that this is how she died. And I ended up sending it to her. And so I don't know, but
I love that.
That made me believe in it.
Yeah, I believe spirit was coming through you. That's how I say it. It's like when it's things like that where when I hear you say, I was writing so fast, I didn't even know. Those to me are incredible spiritual experiences, right? Is that how you got into writing? Like, let's talk about your books now. Like, if in 2014 at 65, how did that, I'd love to talk about your books here. How did you start writing your memoirs?
Well, that particular, that They Left Us Everything, the first one, that one, I felt like I had no choice. That was Mom speaking to me, or I felt that. That was an urge when I was living in that house in Oakville after they died. I'd gone there to, clean it out. And I ended up, the house didn't sell, and I ended up not selling for 2 years. So I ended up sort of abandoning this house and going out there and staying there. And had all these memories around me and all of Mom's letters, which were very detailed letters that we discovered after she died. And so that's how that book just poured out of me for 9 months, as of course.
Of course.
And that's how long it took to write, and then it took another couple of years to edit. So that she died in 2010. I moved out there in 2011 and stayed a couple of years. So it finally got published 2014. But that's not. I've been writing all my life. I just hadn't published. Had the confidence to think my writing was worth anything. So I did everything else. But
so that takes me to a place of when you just said that right now, that you've been writing your whole life. You're obviously a creative. If you've been a painter and illustrator, and I actually want to make sure I ask you about the magazines, because I think there's a message here for those of us that are, for me, in my 50s. I have a lot of people around me in their 60s that have even not retired, but have left a career or have not been in a career, and they're really being drawn to the soul nudges, and they're getting these nudges and intuitive ideas. And then the answer is well, who am I to do that now? Right? It's like I'm too old, or who's going to care? So talk to these women around me, Plum. What would you say to them?
Well, that they're babies. That really, I mean, from my perspective, from an 80-year-old looking back,
Yeah.
in my 40s is when it all started. Like that's the beginning. That's when you've raised your family and you've done all the dutiful things, and um, you're finally coming into your own. When I look back, I mean that those to me were the, you know, um, richest years, and I'm not talking about financial at all. The richness of knowing who you are and how much you can accomplish, create creatively. You're kind of open to those things if you weren't before. You realize what you've missed. I think because I have a lot of friends who, for whatever reason, whether they were discouraged by their families or they didn't think, they were more sort of scientific math people, they realize something's missing when they in their 40s and they pick up a paintbrush or they pick up a pen or whatever, because some creative endeavor. And of course, creativity never retires. So you never have to, you actually don't retire your creative self ever.
Oh, I love that.
That keeps going until the day you die. And I think about I've had some, that's the other thing. But the other thing that happens at 80, which I'm just discovering now, is that you lose a lot of your friends. There are all these cullings that happen. And so naturally, of course.
Yes.
But and Mom always said you should always have friends who are 15 years younger and 15 years older. And you move through life like that, acquiring and losing. But you always try and that's what keeps you young, is you have these young friends and you're a mentor and a mentee, depending on where, but you're always in the middle with the older friends and younger friends, and you move through that way. And I think that's just a wonderful piece of advice. But my problem now is that my friends who were 15 years older, they've died.
Yes.
And I miss them.
Yeah.
And I it's really funny because I look on the street now for a 95-year-old.
Yes.
Because I want a new friend who's 95. And so I've been known to actually just go and sit down on a park bench and have a conversation with somebody that I think is nice.
I love that. I mean, my dad just turned 90 actually. And talk about spiritual experiences. I think he was always spiritual, but through losing my mom, and then he actually got remarried, went back to India, got remarried. That ended up in a divorce, unfortunately, and then he ended up having open heart surgery after all the stress. And he doesn't say this, but I think he had a spiritual experience, probably a near-death experience after that, because now he's so tapped in. He talks about God every day. He's like, I can't find my keys. I just ask God where my keys are, right? And now he's living in such purpose in life, but same thing. The hardest thing that he deals with is all his friends. Like, he goes to a lot of funerals, and he's outlived all his friends.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, but I love that your mom said that, because that's such great advice. Keep friends 15 years older and 15 years younger.
Yeah.
Right? I love that.
Yeah, it's really important, and it's not so easy to do. You end up finding that you're you just sort of naturally surrounded yourself with people your own age, or mostly, or some sprinkling of a few younger people, maybe, if you're lucky. But you actually have to be intentional about it.
You know what I like about that, Plum? And there's probably a few of my friends listening to this who are, there's a bunch of us in this Oakville, Burlington, Mississauga, Guelph area, where a lot of entrepreneurial events for women have started, like women that are more connected. So not necessarily spiritual, but very soulful, heart-led. And some of us that are in our 50s, we just went to an event that a friend of mine who's in her 30s ran. And so I love that, because I'm like, I have all these women in my 30s around me. I go to their events, but sometimes we go to them and we're seeking the 50-year-olds. But your perspective is, I don't need to seek the 50-year-olds. I could be so curious and open to befriend the 30-year-olds. Why not?
Right, exactly.
And actually, there was all these conversations happening about their small kids and everything. And I was able to mentor a couple women and give them that experience now that my half my kids are outside of the house, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really, really wise.
Well, I just think it's like, in The Trouble with Fairy Tales, that my last chapter is about that fairy tale, The Musicians of Bremen, which is funny. A lot of people don't know. Well, of course, a lot of younger people now, they've never been read the fairy tales, the Grimm fairy tales. They don't, unless
I've never heard of that one. And you mentioned another one, The Bearded Man at that event.
Bluebeard.
Say again?
Bluebeard.
Bluebeard. I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, so yeah, unless Disney's made a movie, they don't know these old stories. But they're important stories, and the one in the Musicians of Bremen, all these 5 animals have been kicked out of their various houses because they're too old and they're considered useless, and so they meet up in the woods serendipitously and decide to band together because they say something better than death we can find anywhere. And they, go through the woods and they come to some robbers in a house in the woods, and they use each other they climb on top of each other's shoulders to be able to see through the window. And that image, to me, it was like a totem pole. And I thought that's a really interesting image where the older, the old donkey was on the bottom, and like the older animals are on the bottom, lifting the younger ones onto their shoulders so that the younger ones can tell them what they see in the future. And the younger ones are grounded, telling the little ones where they've been. Like,
wow.
It's really a powerful image, I think.
I actually have like full body chills, which to me is like my spirit guides coming through me, like locking something in. Like, this is such a powerful message.
Yeah, it's really important, I think.
Even how you said there's got to be something better than death. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Oh, I don't say it. That's what the animals say in the story.
So where in the work I'm doing, and I don't know if it's phones and social media and just busyness of life, but there's so much fear. There's so much fear of death, actually. There's so much fear of death.
Uh-huh.
So just that comment, there's got to be, it's like that perspective shift of what if we looked at what I would say is like, what I'm thinking is like, let's look for beauty because beauty's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be something better than death. That's so interesting. Why do you think people are so fearful and afraid to do something that, like, you've done things, Plum, over the years, even with like starting a magazine, a publishing company. You did things that women weren't doing.
Yeah, I've always been entrepreneurial. Ever since I was a child, I was always looking for ways to make money because my dad wouldn't give us any. I think that's probably as simple as that. I don't know. And then my inventive nature, I have a very inventive nature anyway. So I love figuring out how, I love inventing things. That's part of the entrepreneurial spirit too. And I just had the past 8 days, whatever, I've been babysitting a 5-year-old, and having to think up things for us to imagine for us to do every day has been really good for me. Exhausting, but good for me. And because it's been a long time since I've done that, but I think I love taking a risk. That it's not always that's not always a totally positive thing, because I'll take risks that don't work out sometimes. But I understand the anxiety of today's world. I think everybody's feeling anxious, not necessarily about death, but just about the world, because we've got all these, we've got all this news 24/7. We didn't used to have that. I'm one of the few people that doesn't use a cell phone, but it's becoming harder and harder for me to actually exist in the world without one. So I'm going to probably have to cave.
You might have to cave. It's like your grandchildren are probably like trying to get a hold of you.
I've got a flip phone, but not one that I can scroll, and I don't have a plan.
This is interesting, Plum. Yeah, I agree with you. I think in this day and age, we're inundated with negativity that now people have to make a choice. And this was part of my journey when I was younger. As a young mom, I was carrying what I call low level overwhelm, which is probably what people are calling anxiety now, and like three kids under five. And I didn't even, it was just what I just had a headache all the time. I had neck pain all the time. And when I went through, I hired a coach and I went through this coaching, and I realized that I was letting, and I think I'm very sensitive, very in tune to energy. And I don't think I realized that when I was younger. But if I really think back, I think I'm very, very like porous, like empathic. So I feel things deeply. So I had to start turning the news off, turning the radio off in the car. So consciously. So that was my point, is now I think people have to make a choice to like take control of their own life and what they consume.
And not only that, but you have the addiction quality now, which you didn't used to have. I mean, the cell phone, we know that for a fact, that it's actually addictive. It's been, the algorithms have been designed to be addictive. So it's even harder to say no and turn it off than it was when you just had to turn the knob on the radio in the car, right?
Yeah.
And my daughters are the same as you. They've made one of them has made a conscious decision to not listen to the news anymore because the anxiety is too great.
Yeah. And I tell you, it's a full-time job for me. When I'm around friends, we get together with our university friends sometimes, and everyone wants to talk about politics, and I leave the room. I can feel it in my body. Mm-hmm. And my husband and I have a agreement, actually, that when there's anything big happening in the world, he lets me know. But and because he doesn't have that, he doesn't take it, he doesn't feel it, he takes it as knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so we just realized over the year, so it works, where I don't have to expose my energy to it yet. When there's something, he feels me in. And on some of the things I'll watch, but I'll be prepared to watch. Mm-hmm. So it's really, really interesting.
It is interesting, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love this whole like conversation about that your creative part of you. I call it our creative spirit. I actually believe that spiritual part, that voice, so I call it your soul's voice. I believe that's our creative spirit. And I love that you said like it never ends. So why? And I think it's society, right? Conditioning. You get to 65, you retire. Well, Plum got to 65 and she wrote her first book.
Right. And I had a friend, and I talk about her in both books. I called her my other mother because she was 15 years older. So she died during the pandemic, unfortunately. So I wasn't able. Anyway, she was 102. So Pat Goss was her name. She was she spent her whole career as the art teacher at the ballet school in Toronto. And then when she retired from that, well, first of all, she was 77 when she had a dream that told her to stop painting and take up stone carving. She said she could see this in the dream, this piece of stone and a carving knife. And so at the age of 77, she started this whole other career, which took her all around the world to find the best marble and stone. And she would come home and carve the pieces and sell them. I have got a ton of sculptures of hers here.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and she continued doing that right up until she was 100.
So is that what you would, like, look at that. Someone starts something at 77 and does it till they're 100. So how do you advise the women my age who maybe are struggling right now with, what do I do next? What do I step into? What would you guide them to do, even just to hear that voice more?
Well, first of all, they have to want to hear the voice. That's the first thing. I think they have to want to find it, and they may already be hearing it but not trusting it, or
how do they trust it? Because this is very common in conversation. It's like, I get that intuitive nudge. I hear people say this. I actually did a masterclass on this yesterday, and they're like, I'm just not trusting. So then if they're not trusting, they don't take action.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say surround yourself, have more conversations with people who do trust it.
Mm.
You need to reinforce the message, I think. If
Mm.
you're with other people who trust it and have experiences, I think that opens up, because I think there's such a judgmental aspect to this by outside forces, by society in general.
Yeah.
You know, people will think you're nuts,
Yeah.
um, or you'll think that that's what they're thinking. In
Yes.
actual fact, they're probably just feeling really insecure because they haven't found their spirit guide yet. Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's
so
like you were saying at the beginning that everybody has access to this. And I do think it is because of people are afraid.
hmm
And someone might think and someone might think you're crazy. And I actually have a story. When my girlfriend works at a hospital, she's a pharmacist in an ICU, and they were doing this peer review, and they had to fill out these forms because they wanted to check on all of their mental health. And one of the questions were, do you hear voices in your head? And
right,
so she's like me. So she talks to her spirit guide. She's having conversations all the time.
yeah,
So she hesitated how she was going to answer, but she answered yes. They pulled her aside and they're like, we know you. We know you're okay, but you answered this question very not how we expected. And so that opened up. Like, this to me is like revelation that they're having these conversations now in a hospital downtown Toronto. So I have hope. But that's what I want, Plum. Like, listening to you, I want people to not be afraid to have this conversation. Drip it on your friends, whether, oh yeah, I was talking to my mom, or I'm having conversation, I'm playing with this, or I heard a voice, or I had a dream, and the dream said that I need to go carve stone.
you know, I think a lot of people um, will have this sort of experience. It's interesting. I hadn't thought of this before, but I think a lot of people have this experience around death. When
Mm.
someone dies, they will often, even though they've never believed in any of this before, they're willing to believe it if their dead loved one visits them that night, hovers
Mm.
over their bed, sends them a message of some kind, ends
Yes.
up being the red robin on the fence. You know, they're like, something will happen around
Mm.
death. The grieving process maybe is what opens people up. I don't know.
Yeah, I
But
agree with
a
you.
lot of people are willing to admit that that happened, even if they're not willing to admit any other, you know.
Yes. And this is actually, I'm glad this came to you, because I actually think there's something here. So I have a lot of conversations with mostly women. And when I say, like, do you believe in angels? And they're like, oh yeah, I see a cardinal all the time. Since my mom passed, I see a cardinal all the time. Yet when we're talking about writing their book, or something in their business, it's a total disconnect. They're not putting the dots together because it's all one energy,
Yeah.
right? And so I think this is so true, that some people either have had their own near death experience or have experienced grief. And I wonder if they're open to the possibility. That's what happened to me. I was open. I just, all of a sudden, it's like my energy opened up. Maybe I wasn't as close to it because I was seeking answers.
hmm hmm
Curiosity, I guess,
Yeah.
or vulnerability, like you said. Like, sometimes when we're the most vulnerable is when, some people call it, you have your God moment, which is like, God help me. Like, I don't know how to get through this difficult
Yeah.
time, this trauma. And
Yeah.
suddenly something shows up,
Yeah.
right?
And conversely, when you're really riding high, if you're in a creative um, stream, you've just invented. So I used to call it my street of green lights. Whenever I would start a business or create something, um, and everything was going your way, I would call it a street of green lights. Other people give it other names, but it's about synchronicity. It's
Mm,
the positive things that you needed to happen at exactly that moment. They actually happen. You'll meet the person you're supposed to meet, or the investor you needed to come in. If it was meant to be, if the project is a go and it was meant to be, the universe helps you. It just does.
And so, has every time that you've had a stream of green lights, so to say, has it always worked out for you? Like, every
Yes,
time you've had an idea?
yes. If I've had it hasn't always worked out when I've had an idea, but whenever there's been a street of green lights, it's worked out. Yeah.
Interesting. I love that. I want people to really take that in. Plum, I'd love to. I mean, we might have to have a part two because I haven't even gotten deep into your books. Maybe we'll do that in the next interview. But you taught when I met you that night at that gallery, you talked about your recipe box, your box of big ideas. I forget.
I've got it right here.
Yeah, show me, and I'd love for you because I want to share something with you.
Oh, what?
Yeah, because I saw you do that yesterday when I was teaching an online class to my community. I was talking about intuitive ideas, and I said I met this woman and I'm interviewing her tomorrow, and she has a box. And one of the women in my group, she's like, I'm going to get a box. So tell us about your box. Look at that. Brilliant ideas.
Yeah, it's a recipe. It's all just recipe cards.
It's a recipe card.
And it's filled with junk. And even today, they're really funny. Some of them you can just pick.
Okay, pick a couple. I'm curious.
What is it? Quote from Dad. Your mother and I are in good shape these days. She welcomes me into her bed at night. And I say that's because she forgets who you are. Wait a minute, I need my glasses. I don't know why I wrote this at the time. Oldlady.com. And then hanging into the light, you see that branch was a boat coming towards me, but it isn't, so there we are. So Dad had Alzheimer's at the time, and I think I'm just writing down quotes that might show up in the book. Your mother always does this. It makes me so mad. She says, I got you a present in South America, but I haven't been there. Yeah. So, I mean, who knows? Oh, this says, new hat. Oh, because I did a painting called The New Hat. Yeah. So I don't know. That's just a quote to put in a book, I guess.
But these are like, ideas to put in a book, or like you said, new hat. Then you did a painting.
Here I've got disposable bobbins. Invent disposable bobbins made of plastic. But of course, they've been made now.
Okay. Well, there's people that say if you wait too long on the big magical idea that comes to you, somebody else is going to take it.
I've always believed that. All the ideas, I write about that from really young, when I was really young, I think I was 10 or 11. And I wrote about we drove down to Virginia every summer to Mom's relatives in the car. It took 2 days. And I write about this answer coming through the window. And it made me believe that all ideas were floating in the universe, reaching down, looking for an unsuspecting person to hit. That I always believed people didn't get ideas got people. So there are all these ideas floating around in the universe, and you have to be the first one to grab it and go with it, make it happen, because somebody else is going to grab it at the same time.
Oh, I love that. Oh, you just said something in a whole different way. Oh, ideas get the people. Yes. Yeah. Okay, Plum, let's leave everybody with this idea that people don't get ideas. Ideas come to you.
Yes, but you have to be quick. You have to be the first. You have to grab it.
You have to act on it.
Somebody else is going to do it. That's right.
Right. And so so let's encourage everyone right now, as we're finishing up this interview, to move on their ideas without knowing how it's going to end up.
Yeah.
Because on your side, it's like it's brought you joy, books, and I can tell you're not holding on to the fact that it's published. And even at the event, you were like, you weren't selling your books. Like you were just so relaxed about it.
That's one other thing I should say that I did when I was younger, even when I was a single mother and had very little money. I put aside a certain amount every year. It was actually $5,000. I didn't take trips like most people. I didn't go to spas. I didn't go spend money getting my nails done or anything. But I did put aside that chunk of money, and it was for experiment. It was for ideas. It was for, if I had an idea.
Taking risks.
Yeah, exactly. If I wanted to make a prototype of something, that's what that money was for. And I used it all the time.
Oh, Plum, I love that.
Yeah,
Thank you for that. That's a great idea. So I actually want to encourage everybody to start your own recipe box, like you have the brilliant idea box, because I put mine in my phone in my notepad, but I actually, I've had friends talk about having a win box, but it was just faster for me when they would come while I'm driving. So I would voice text it to my phone, because otherwise by the time I would get home, I would forget the idea, try to memorize it. Yeah. So that I really want to encourage people to do that, because a couple of people I was talking to yesterday, they're like, yeah, I have all these ideas, but I'm so busy doing this that I don't get to it. And some people still have like young kids. So start a box. You don't have to like act on everything like you're saying, but there might be some that are going to start like pulling you, like that first book, being in your parents' home, and you said it just came through you.
Yeah.
And just to trust that.
You're a conduit. If you're open to the universe is going to use you.
Yes, I love that. If you're open to the universe is going to use you. And so my audience that is listening to this, they're open to the universe. They're actually pretty tapped in. And now the next step is like, believe it, that it's for you, right? Like the idea is coming to you.
Have fun with it. It's like never, don't have any grand expectations. Just, it's play. And people forget how to play. And when we're really little, children know how to play.
So would you say the same thing for the women that are listening that are writing a book? Because I think what's happening, and it even happens to me, is I start writing and then I get busy and I start doing other things and I fall out of the writing practice. But to make it play, or like you said, you used to get up super early?
Oh, well, and I think I talked about that good friend of mine in the Maritimes who's a well-known, Sharon Mackay, a well-known children's author, a young adult author. When she had her young children, she told me she used to set the alarm and get up at 4:30 every morning and write for 3 hours before everybody else woke up. She went to bed early too, obviously, but that's how she carved out her time. But she was disciplined about it and wrote regularly. If you do that, you can write a book a year.
Okay, I think you've just inspired me. I get up at 6, so and actually even an hour earlier would be easy, right? Okay, I'm gonna do it. Next time we talk, you get to ask me how far I've gotten. Plum, this has been so great. Where can people find you? Like maybe your website?
Yeah, plumjohnson.com.
Okay, and they can check out your books on your website.
Yeah. I don't always keep it up to date. My children have to crack the whip to get me to. I think they just signed me up to Instagram. I'm not going to post anything. I try not to, be very active on social media. I'm not active on. It's not that I try. I just am not, and I apologize for that.
What's next for you? So I'll put your website in the show notes of the podcast so people know where to find you. So what's next for you? Like, what are you working on?
I'm working on another book of fiction, which I've never tried fiction. I want to learn. So it's a learning curve. I've been putting aside some notes, some research. I've been doing research for a few years now on a particular topic, and I'm gonna try and see what happens.
I love it. Oh, you're so inspiring. Thank you so much for being here, Plum. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you listening. If this episode resonated with you and you wish to speed up your growth, feel free to check out my programs and services. Just go to my website, binu.ca. And if you know someone else who is seeking more meaning in life and could use some inspiration and high vibes along the way, please pass them on to me. It would mean the world. And it goes a long way if you take a few seconds right now and leave me a 5-star review and share this with your friends. I'll be forever grateful.